VIP members, brand spanking new with your brand spanking new memberships, all nice and shiny. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the channel and to this, the first of some member content, members exclusive, members only content. This will hopefully, if you so enjoy it, be an ongoing series called Somehow ... It Returned, featuring us, the guys.
Yeah, we're the dudes, the guys,
we don't have a name.
No.
So you guys may be aware that there's a group called the Genre Guys over on the WDW Pro channel.
You're like the host from that show.
I am, but we don't have a name for this. So there's me, Tommy Tables. There is Martin Stone, and then there is the energetic Nolan Thunder, and we need your help. I think we need a name for us, and please.
We were born without a name, and we're really sad.
Yeah, we're like the low rent syndicated Genre Guys.
Yeah, but
we're the bootleg copy.
We're the bootleg copy. No. We're completely different, covering very, very different things. And so, at any rate, the entire point of this and the premise is to bring back stuff that might have been forgotten, should have been forgotten, or maybe should not have been forgotten. And that covers pretty much the entire gamut of things, from old TV shows you might remember to, and I love this, I think this was Martin's suggestion, inflatable sneaker pumps. So we're going to be getting to all of those in subsequent episodes. But for today, our episode and our subject will be somehow... Dun, 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 dun. VIPER returned. So this is a TV show called VIPER about a car, the Dodge Viper. And this was a show that aired back in the 90s and was, I suppose, a 90s version of Knight Rider, as the best way you could probably describe it. Although
when it was being developed, it was being called internally as Knight Rider Junior. It was seen as like it had been a minute since Knight Rider was coming out. So basically when they were making this show, they were like, okay, we need to make like a new type of Knight Rider show. And that's how it was conceived, really. And they wanted to sell the car.
Knight Rider Junior sounds like a cartoon. Like James Bond Jr., you guys are...
You made a James Bond Jr. Please tell me they didn't do that.
Oh, they did.
That.
They did.
Did they?
Oh,
yeah. We might have to cover that then. That sounds...
Was it like Muppet Babies, though? Do you have like a little James Bond running around?
So James Bond's nephew, James Bond Jr., is at a private school, and he goes on adventures.
This sounds vaguely...
Okay, this might be a future episode.
Oh,
yeah, this almost sounds like the prototype of Enola Holmes. But anyway, we're getting distracted. We're talking about really cool cars.
It just becomes James Bond through the rest of the video, and it's like, how did that happen?
So we're talking about VIPER, and so this was a TV show about, well, the Dodge Viper. So you might not be aware, but the Dodge Viper was a revolutionary new car which had been created by Dodge. And it was a bit of a callback to the old classic muscle cars of bygone years. And so this car, its claim to fame when it first came out, and I'm just going to throw up an image here of the actual Dodge Viper RT10, if I can get that up here. This car, when it first came out, its claim to fame was the fact that it had a 500 horsepower V10 engine. And wow. This thing was basically an engine on wheels. Apparently it was almost like a bit of a death trap.
Oh yeah, 488 cubic inch displacement. It was a beast. Torque out.
And it was expensive too. It was like $90,000 today's money.
Although today you can find them for like 40 grand, I think, maybe.
I totally went online and trying to figure out if I could buy one of these. So if y'all want to like if we all want to crowdfund like a show, and we'll put the decals of the show on the side. There we go.
What, you mean like wrap it up in like TPP livery or something?
Yes. Jonas, get on that.
Yeah, serious. Okay, well we'll have to speak to Jonas about that. But anyway, all that to be said, Dodge had come up with this car, and they decided that the best way to get people to buy it was to make a TV show out of it. So they made a show called VIPER, and it actually I think the show actually went into production before the car actually started being for sale.
Seriously?
It was right around that time, yeah. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie with you guys. I sort of said this in our pre-show conversation, but I fell in love with this car. I was just like, my driving goal in life, and it still is, to one day be able to buy one of these things. I just thought it was amazing. It was just the coolest thing in the world. Even looking at it now, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm sorry. Martin, take over. I'm getting too excited.
Calm down, Tommy. Calm down.
You want me to gush over this car? Because I will. I love this car.
Please.
The Viper was like, it was a throwback to the old cars. It didn't have safety equipment, no ABS, no.
It didn't have windows.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was what a muscle car is supposed to be. And there's a line in the pilot about how dangerous the car is to drive, because this car was so dangerous to drive.
They're not wrong.
Oh, here, let's see. I think this is a good.
You still have a Dodge Viper poster up in your garage, don't you, Tommy?
I do. And in fact, the Dodge Viper, this cherry red Viper, was one of the first sort of model car kits that I ever made. It was one summer I was able to find it, and I put it together, and it was a blast. So, I mean, look at that engine. Like, that is this car is literally 4 wheels and an engine. It's wild.
It's a shame they never made a V12.
Sorry, go on.
It's a shame they never made a V12.
Yeah, they never did. And so, yeah, no, that's a fair point. Although, what would you really do with that much power?
Whatever you want.
With great power comes
Go
great
mad.
responsibility. No. All right.
Wow, we went
Fair
to completely different ends
enough.
of the spectrum.
So back to the show. You might be noticed. We really did. Well, at least we're not talking about James Bond anymore. But back to the show. You might have noticed, and I think this is the big selling point of the show itself. Like, you might have noticed, this doesn't really look a lot like the red car that we were just sort of showing you guys, right? And there is a reason. And the big hook and catch of this show was the fact that this car could transform. And I'm going to show you a clip of that right now.
It's the coolest 90s CGI thing you'll ever see in your life.
And so the really cool thing about this, and you might have noticed, is that it was almost okay. Well, before I get into the mechanics of the thing, let's do a quick recap of what the show is about. So, Nolan, I think you said that you did a ton of research on this. What can you give us a brief synopsis?
Okay, of the history or the plot line of the show?
Just the basic
plot line of the show. Let's do that.
Okay, so basically, all right. So the series follows our protagonist, Michael Payton. He is a part of a band of thieves, basically. Like, they're really sketchy. They try to do the classic heist stuff of, you have like this really snooty, evil, rich dude who hires this individual group to like commission them to like steal expensive stuff for him so he can keep being rich and powerful and evil and all that good stuff, and golf and stuff. So these band of thieves, they go in, they start breaking down their typical heist thing. So when this happens, though, they're doing a getaway. And all of these characters, by the way, are really cool. You have him. There's one of the main antagonists of the show. You have a girl there. I cannot remember their names in my life. I'm sorry. But they're trying to make a getaway. Somehow they all have these cool black 90s cars. I don't know how that went about at the dealership
Stealth.
trying to
Dodge
get
Stealth.
what's. Yes, I don't know how they got all those cars in black at once.
Every car in this TV series is either a Dodge or a Chrysler.
Okay, now I'm kind of creeped out by that, honestly. Could you imagine that? You wake up one day and every car you see is a Tesla? Like, okay, that's creepy. But no, so he's trying to make his getaway, but unlike the other ones, he's stopped. And so he gets in a major injury in a car wreck. And so while he's in the hospital or whatever, you have this dude who is like trying to run for mayor. And he's very in all these shady type organization. It shows a lot of corruption within the city. but he's trying to basically do whatever he can to get into this position of power as a mayor. Beneath him, you have, I believe she was like the sheriff, or like the head of the police force and stuff. And she's kind of, the both of them are overseeing what is happening with this surgery. And our friend here, who's trying to run for mayor, has this brilliant idea where it's like, hey, let's modify his mind, like erase his memory, so he can be like a driver for us in this new project we're doing, because the police force is trying to use this new car that is the Dodge we were talking about before. The name of the car in the show was called
The Defender.
Thank you, the Defender. I was about to call it the Ultimate. The Defender, and it is really freaking cool car. So they're going to use this car to basically be like the super police of the area and such. The car is developed by a character by the name of Julian Wilkes, played by Dorian Harewood, who is a really good actor, by the way.
He's the fellow in the wheelchair there.
Yes. He's in the wheelchair, and he's very passionate. He's very the technical side of things. He's very realistic kind of portrayal of the character too, because you can tell like he's all about the details of his car, kind of an engineer at heart, whereas you have our protagonist, Michael Payton, played by James McCaffrey, rest in peace.
Sadly passed away recently. Yeah.
Yes.
The gentleman
is more
right here.
Yeah, he is more of the, like loose kind of pilot, like, it's like, gotta get behind the wheel to understand things. So while he's down, they're like, okay, let's get rid of his old memories, because he was going to rot in jail anyway for everything he's done, because he'd been a troublemaker since he was a teenager. But he's wicked talented. He hit the streets when he was 10, and then he got behind the wheel when he was 12. So they're like, hey, let's do this shady thing. And of course, there's a lot of objection. The woman who's like the head of the police force, who's a very good actress. I do not know her name, unfortunately. I'm sorry. She was like, this ain't really cool, but she gives the approval of it. And then you have this beautiful nurse lady. Once again, don't know the name of the actress, but she's also like, hey, this isn't cool to be messing with this dude's mind. This is like some MK Ultra stuff. This ain't cool. So they go and do that to this dude, and he's starting to think that he is a cop. So he now has the new name of Joe Astor. And he thinks like, okay, I was a cop and now I need to like get my life back together. So the nurse starts falling for him. The two fall in love with each other. Initially, Julian is very hesitant to approve of like having Joe or Peyton, whichever you want to call him, go behind the wheel because he's like, what, the 12th driver for them. So he doesn't like his attitude.
The other guys keep crashing the car. I was just gonna say the other guys keep, like the other test drivers they had kept crashing the car. And so
yes, and this man put good work into that car, but he can't drive the car, obviously. So it's in a bit of pickle. But if they don't get Peyton to drive the car, well, the project's just going to be flat out shut down. And he's got a family. He doesn't want to see that happen. So they start working together. They take the car out on excursions to stop crime. Fun fact, the car does not have any machine guns or weapons. It transforms, it does all the cool stuff. Like it shoots like a freaking electrical laser to like
an EMP blast, basically.
Yes. You basically shuts down the cars and they can bring them to justice. It's like RoboCop, but with a car and less violent. And the reason it doesn't have any machine guns, though, is because Julian got basically hit in like a drive-by shooting when he was young. So none of them really want to put weapons into the car. And you start getting a really refreshing, like nice connection with these characters. You can tell that Julian and Joe Astor, like while they kind of are at odds with each other, you start getting a strong sense of loyalty in this show. Like in a range of, a lot of shady, like mob boss type people, they are very big on like, we help each other out to get to where we need to be and kind of take the fall for certain people. You see that a lot in like different positions of power in this show. So they start hitting the street, and so everything is kind of getting better. He's getting his life together. But then all of a sudden, the old group of thieves he used to play with, and used to be a part of, they catch on that he's still alive. They're thinking that he's like a ghost. So they proceed to kidnap him and take him back to his their facility. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, do any of you guys know the name of the actor or the character with the long hair who's like really cool, he's got the British accent? He somehow outcools our main character. Like
he was like
He was on Babylon 5.
He was on Babylon 5. Yeah. Hang on. I'm gonna take a look at the cast.
I can't believe I didn't take a note of him. I'm sorry. But he is like you have all the tropes of like
I was just gonna say, like, the long and short of the Joe Astor character. Picture Darth Revan, basically a Darth Revan story, where he was a bad guy, he gets his mind wiped out, and then he comes back as a good guy, but then discovers he's a bad guy, etc. And
so then he's emotionally conflicted. So he goes back to so he's kind of given a choice. It's like, hey, you want to join us? You know, be real path. At least we're honest to you, unlike a lot of things in the real world these days. But besides that. So he's conflicted, but he still has fallen in love with his smoking hot nurse girlfriend, and she's like, "I'm sorry." And it's like the most movie thing ever, where it's like, "I live a double life. I've held a secret from you." And he's got his long hair, of course. He's like, "Baby, you lied to me. How could you do that to me?" So he needs to go off and be emo for a bit, and then he decides, he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna come back. I'm get my life together. I have a second chance here. My life's going to be better." So he proceeds to go back to see his girl, and they blow her up. Explosion. Tad. Terrible. It's actually really well done for a TV show. This show is the cheesiest, most hokey movie TV show thing you'll ever see. But in a day and age where everything is so like either agenda driven or needs to do everything to be politically correct, to see a thing that's just so stereotypical movie, like the fun movie tropes that we get behind, like there's things we want to see in movies to where we can kind of project ourselves onto, because this is basically, there's the guy. This is like the encapsulation of like it could apply to females too, but like the male fantasy, like you're the cool guy with the long hair. You need to take on this other cool guy who's the villain. You got the hotties on both sides. You're driving cool cars. You're working with the police, but you're a loose cannon. It's all the fun tropes of that, but it still isn't just stupid the whole time, because like you have a lot of deep emotional connection. There's a strong sense of family. There's redemption. There's betrayal. There's a lot of things that will go really deep here. And the actors and actresses. Yes, exactly. And it's got cool effects. Some things might be seen as dated or cheesy, but honestly, I think that's part of the charm of this show, is that at a time when CGI couldn't just be used like an assembly line, they had to be using it as minimal as they could, because every transformation, that cool transformation that Thomas showed you earlier, that was like $50,000 every time they had to do that transformation. It was insane. So they had to use a lot of practical effects, and sometimes you'd see it switch off screen. They had to get creative with things. And it shows a lot of opportunity where the show could go. So from here on out, he had to basically redeem himself. You eventually see one of the rich elite dudes who caused him to forget his memories. He gets thrown off a bridge. That was really satisfying. I didn't expect that to happen. But yeah, no, it's a lot of redemption, trying to fight his way back to basically be a cop now and find he's finding his purpose in life again. And it goes from there. And Martin, you know more of what happens later on in the series. Would you like to take it from here?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. The series got dropped by NBC and went silent for like 3 years, and then suddenly it pops up in first run syndication with a new team, except for the Italian guy who sticks with the show through all 4 seasons.
We didn't even talk about the Italian guy, Frankie. He's the best.
Oh man. Okay, is that kind of a slap in the face?
Motor pool guy, and they don't want him on the team.
Yeah.
I find it hilarious that I left him out of the submarine, because he wants to be on the team, and everyone's just like, "Get the heck out of here! We hate you. You're annoying." And yet,
but he still makes it on. He still makes it on.
Because he's competent. He actually, as bumbling as he is, he adds so much because they can't do it without him.
Exactly. So keep going, Martin, please.
Okay, so let's see. Seasons 2 and 3, we got a new driver. Uh, he's a CIA who's an expert in evasive driving, CIA operative, because Joe has been called away to even more dangerous missions somewhere in Europe. um, so we work with this team for a couple of years, and then season 4 we see Joe called back to duty, and it's Metro City, is it? So like City City.
Yeah, it's Metro. Yeah, it's Metro City, I believe.
And I think Julian even comes back in season 4. Is that right, Tommy?
Yes,
No,
yes, he does.
Julian comes back, but like only in a guest a guest appearance category, I think. I yeah, like this show was for me. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just the right show at the right time, but it completely captured my imagination. I loved watching Knight Rider. I loved watching Airwolf. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit here. So these types of shows were always kind of like my bread and butter. And so when this one came out, I got to tell you, that transformation, that car, and Nolan, as you said, the dynamic you had between Joe, Julian, and Frankie in that first season, for whatever reason, it worked. Like, yeah, it was cheesy, but it was also like there was just something about it, as je ne sais quoi. And so
there's there's kind of a saying I heard once where it's like, if you're watching a movie, if all these characters died, would you care? Every single one of these characters, I would feel sad and kind of want to cry because I'm like, okay, I care about these characters. They're actually fun. They've got humanity, and they all live in this like what? Okay, do you guys know what this was? It was like an abandoned power plant or like a.
I was going to touch on that because not to give away a show from the 1990s, but Joe goes back and his girlfriend has saved all of his effects from when he was Michael Payton, and he's got a safe deposit box, and he goes, and it's that standard size safe deposit box in TV and movies, and it's got enough money in it to buy a dam.
I know, right?
An abandoned hydroelectric dam.
Right, and it's abandoned, so abandoned that it's not on any of the survey maps. That doesn't.
This sounds like a filmmaker's dream. You know how hard it'd be to find that?
What was the other quibble I had? When they're given the rundown of how dangerous a man Michael Payton is, the guy running for mayor says, at 12 he was behind the wheel of a car. He spent half his life in jail. The guy's like 35. If he spent half his life in jail, he was driving for 3 years?
Yeah, that's a really good point. He didn't really get a lot of driving experience then. But it's funny again, going back to the young impressionable lad that I was at the time. I was like, gosh, I wonder if they have real jobs where you can be a driver. And I asked my parents, are like, what the hell are you talking about? But all that to be said, my hopes were crushed.
And then later the dude like made a career out of Gran Turismo and had a whole movie made about him and such. So maybe Tommy, maybe there's still hope out there.
There could be. But so the thing about this show was the fact that it lasted a surprisingly long time. As Martin had said, the first season, I think it was on NBC, and it was an expensive show. It was a very high production quality show. And unfortunately, it didn't really quite get the ratings that they needed. And so this other company picked it up. The production moved to Canada. Yay. And they swapped out the cast, as Martin alluded to, kept the car, but pretty much everything else about the show kind of changed. And
can I make a correction on that?
Sure.
Yes, you could be right, but from what I saw, what happened was, so the show was being developed by CBS, okay? And as it was being developed, CBS was all like, because it was like CBS and
CBS,
Paramount that were working on it.
Yeah.
And they were working on it, and then they were like, they got cold feet. They were like, oh, this is too violent. Too violent. The car doesn't even have machine guns on it, but it was too violent. Okay, 90s. Anyways, so they didn't want to do it. So NBC instead picked it up. So them and Paramount were going for it. So that first season was like very expensive to make. And I'm going to assume it did well for the car sales. I'm not for sure for the actual car company.
Unfortunately,
but
the Viper never really sold that well.
really? Okay,
Yeah.
so it didn't even do that. So the ratings were kind of poor on NBC, but the ratings were seen as high enough by Paramount to where they saw it as like, hey, we can keep doing this if we like recast it, do it a bit cheaper. And next thing you know, they got 3 more seasons out of it. So it kind of, the ratings thing kind of depends on like the observation. For NBC, nah, it didn't work out. Paramount, it was like, heck yeah, let's syndicate this thing and let's do it on the cheap. So it kind of worked.
Yeah, and so that's where things kind of switched up, and it's funny. A number of shows end up in this kind of pattern, like Airwolf did, for example, too. But this was the part where my interest kind of dropped a little bit because I didn't particularly warm up to the new cast that much, and it was only a little bit later on.
Does it ever work on any show when they do it? Well, sans like a whole new series, like say Star Trek: The Next Generation compared to like the original series. Have you ever thought of like any long-running TV show where they replaced like most of the cast and it actually worked? Like
SG-1?
Maybe.
That is a good point. Yeah. Bringing in the Farscape cast for SG-1 was amazing.
And the guy from Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
This GIF is so satisfying.
Yeah. So one of the things that I loved about this show, and that I spent hours and hours trying to figure out how they actually, how you could make this thing into real life. Like, obviously it's CGI, but I was thinking, like, how do you explain this? Like, how can you make a car that can not only, pop out fangs, I suppose, but also actually change its entire body structure? And
so you mean in like a real world sense to where
in a real world
actually
sense.
function?
So the way that, like, the conceit of the car was that it was covered in these hexagonal panels. And so that when the guy transforms the car, these panels pop up and then they kind of slide around, kind of like a snake skin, which accounts for like the morphing of the vehicle. And then once the morph is complete, the panels, like the hexagons, lock up together. And so when you look at things like materials that can change their shape, like, you remember in Batman, which one was it? Dark Knight Returns. Was it The Dark Knight? I think so. It was The Dark Knight.
Dark Knight Rises?
The Dark no. The second one, The Dark Knight.
Batman Returns?
The Dark Knight.
Oh, do you mean like the armored Batmobile in like Batman Returns?
I'm not even talking about that. Like, actually, I'm talking about, I think I might have been in Batman Begins. No, it was in Batman Begins, sorry, where he's got those wings, which are soft cloth, but as soon as you put the electrical charge through them, they become rigid, right? And they become like glider wings. And so I know that they've developed, and they are still developing, material which can act in a similar way. You run a current through it, and something that was originally very, solid becomes flexible. And so I thought, gosh, wouldn't that be neat if they were able to apply, like, if that was the conceit behind this car and this technology. And in fact, not too long ago, I believe it was BMW, they showcased a car that actually morphs kind of like this one. If I can find the image for you guys, I'll show it to you.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but I mean, I think the body of the car is like, I don't know, rubber or plastic or something, right? But still, the idea of a car changing its shape depending on aerodynamics or whatever, I don't think it's that far-fetched, and it might be something you might see in the future. So that's why I thought
this could happen.
That was really neat.
It seems like every year I get older these days, that the more and more it seems like I'm living out the shows I watched when I was a little kid. Like all the AI stuff going on now. And then what you're telling me about this car thing, I'm like, okay, anything's possible these days. Is this how the older people felt like when they saw Star Trek when they were young? They're like, oh, hey, we have like technology like this now. It's insane. It's so cool.
I saw something the other day about a dynamic wing for a jet that changes based on the airflow to maximize efficiency. Doing amazing stuff.
I found the video. Let's see if my internet connection can hold up, and I'll show you guys. Here, let's see. Does this work? Or are we okay? Let me give this a try.
Okay, here we go.
I know
what is going on.
The video is a bit fuzzy.
I love how futuristic it looks.
Let's open. We are in Munich.
All right, so you get the idea there. So I mean,
Oh wow.
It opens the hood, and then like the light, like the headlights, they reveal themselves as well. Like they'll blink open and stuff. Like, so it's not that far-fetched anymore, right? So I thought it was a really
We're
neat thing.
literally
And one of the
living in
things that
those shows we used to watch. It's insane.
I know, but one of the things, and again, this is a bit of a nitpick for me, what I didn't like about the syndicated shows, like when they switched up the cast, they also switched up the transformation. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean right now.
Oh, Tommy don't like the panels. Tommy don't like the
I didn't like
panels.
the panels. I thought that was a step back. I was
He
like,
probably
what
doesn't
is
like it in
this?
Marvel movies either.
I don't. Hang on. Let me just pop this up for all of you right now. And
On YouTuber
you'll
I was
see
watching that I got a lot of information from Secret Galaxy. He was making the analogy of how it's like the Marvel panels these days, and now I feel like it's going to be used in like every movie. I'll never be able to unsee it. I'm like, oh, it's the lazy transformation. Okay.
all right.
At least in Power Rangers, they had to get creative.
Here we go. So you see like this there we go. There, see the CGI is opening up. You got all these panels and stuff. And just for me, I thought like
It looks like a video
it just
game.
didn't do it for me. But I found out later that it looks like a video game. But I found out later that apparently what we're seeing on screen right now was a hell of a lot cheaper to make than the snakeskin morph from the first season. Like it was something like 1/4 of the cost for the CGI. So that kind of explains why they went with that. And they unfortunately never went back to the snakeskin morph again, which was unfortunate. But all that to be
completely
said,
ditch the
it
CGI and then like do like one of those things where you like the car's driving around a corner and then you see like one of those explosions and a flash and it just appears like from the other side. I know that would look cheap, but I'm kind of like, it'd be kind of cool.
Or you used to have the it cuts to the display on the computer that's showing the process, so you can just play the same one over and over again.
Power Rangers used to do
But-
stuff like that all the time. They do like CGI transformations. Just
Well-
reuse them constantly.
I know, it's true. But all that to be said, I can understand why they switched it up just for the cost. And I am glad that we still were able to get a couple of seasons of the show out of that. So, Martin, I sensed that you were quite a fan of this show, and I'd love to ask you, what was it about it that you liked so much?
It was the car. I'm a car guy. I loved the Dodge Viper. In my mind, when I think of a Dodge Viper, it's blue with the American racing stripes, so the blue and white, but it's got the fangs like the Defender.
Yeah.
Yes. And the funny thing is, you were talking about the blue, that blue color. So something happens later on. I believe it's season 4 when Peyton comes back, that the car gets like horribly wrecked or something, and they go from when it's in its casual mode, real world mode before the transformation. It goes from that Viper red to a blue metallic. I can't remember the exact color of it, but it was like a blue metallic color. And that color you see, fun fact, was never available on the market for purchase. I'm sure there's probably some car dudes who probably have recreated it. It would be weird if they hadn't, but apparently that is something you could never buy, and that was show exclusive.
Yeah, and so that was and if my memory serves, so after they released the Viper for the very first time, people actually did complain about the fact that there were no roll-up windows, that it had no safety features, that it was basically just like an engine on wheels. And so the latter iterations of the Viper included things like, luxuries like power windows and whatnot. And what you see on screen is the Viper GTS Coupe, which came out a couple of years later, and that had an actual hard top and like a bit of a bit of a trunk and whatnot. So it had some changes to the body of the car. And that's what they ended up basing the 4th season car on. I think the red one ended up getting destroyed, but they built a second one, and that's what it was. And that is also a gorgeous car too, like 100%.
It's cobalt. Okay, if I'm correct here, it's cobalt blue metallic is what it's called, because it has to be all fancy.
Mm-hmm. And so so the one that I got on screen right now is the retail one. But you're right that the one in the show was a different shade of blue, a slightly different shade, and it didn't have the white racing stripes on it. Mm-hmm. But here's my question for you guys, though. And Nolan, you've watched the pilot. Martin, you've seen more of it. I've seen a bit of it. The biggest difference between this show as a concept and Knight Rider, which it was based on, is the fact that the car itself wasn't sentient. Like you didn't have the AI in there. You didn't have
Do we
the
know it
talking car
wasn't
like
sentient
Michael.
though?
So all that to be said, what do you guys think? This has always been something that I've thought about with the show. Do you think if they had actually given it an AI, like if they had given it a personality, if they had actually put in a sentience into that car, do you think that would have helped the show or hindered it?
I feel like it would have hindered it because I feel like it would have just came off more as a Knight Rider knockoff. I mean, doing this makes it seem like, oh, especially with for better or for worse, Cobra being out with all the drama that happened with that, a very similar show. It makes it seem like, oh, this is a genre, because when you have like 10 people that are doing the same thing, it's not a ripoff, it's a genre.
Right.
So if they had just done it though with the AI, I think that would have just been too on the note with Kit, and I don't think it would have worked as well. I think it adds a little bit more of a better balance for the fantasy / realistic elements that are in this show.
I think also, it would make it less grounded. I mean, it's a show about a
Granted, it's weird. You go from like emotional trauma from loved one is destroyed in explosion, drive-by shooting, they trying to support your family in a wheelchair, to you go to, hey, I can use a hologram to like clone myself. That's cool, right?
Yeah, so the show was set in quote unquote the near future, even though they were driving 1992 cars. But anyway,
I love a line that's in the show. I took note too. I literally one of my favorite lines that was in this was when he said when Wilkes says to our protagonist, he gets really annoyed when he first met him, and he's like not doing things right when he first got him because he doesn't want to skip all the tutorial stuff. And he says, couple more years, it'll replace his butt with a robot. And I heard that. I thought that was great because this was like the 90s.
Yeah, I remember that.
No, it was so good. Continue your point, Tommy.
Well, I was just going to say, though, that part of me always wonders why they didn't just decide to go full on and make this into a Knight Rider show, because a couple of years later, they did actually make a Knight Rider TV show with Val Kilmer as the voice of Kit, and it featured,
awesome.
And it wasn't even like they didn't even feature the Pontiac Trans Am of the time. It was a Ford Mustang, a Shelby Cobra.
Wait, why would you change the car brand?
Well, because
Pontiac wasn't going to pony up for it.
Yeah, Ford became the sponsor for it, and so talking about derivative, this Shelby Cobra actually also transformed, but it transformed into something out of like the Fast and the Furious Part 7 with just the most ridiculous
like
attack
3
mode,
wings on it, and
like
it was
a spoiler bigger than the car. Like it was almost like a joke, and it had like a neon KR underneath it for when you had it super jump over you. Like it was, yeah.
Speaking of Fast and the Furious, can I just say though, once again, how much I appreciate with like the 90s, how like they had to film like almost everything outside of like the transformations. Like when cars are catching fire, they had to go up to a mountain area to like, I love like the climax of like the pilot to where like you go from like you're in the city, and you have all the pedestrians there. But when we're having our big one-on-one with the villains, like you have this huge mountainside that looks like it's out of like a freaking like car ad, because they're always driving these beautiful mountains at the end where there's like no one else there. And you have like this huge scenic area, and there's so much you can do with it. And they have to do all these like things, like they have to like off-road these vehicles. They had to have explosions happen. It's fun. And what do we have here?
Well, this is the Knight Rider in 2008, and so the only redeeming part about this show was the fact that they had Val Kilmer as the voice of Kit, which was awesome. And when I saw this show, I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? If Dodge had just paid a bit more money, secured the Knight Rider, like the Knight Rider rights and the trademark, it would have been wild. I think it could have been cool, frankly, but maybe there would have been.
Am I gonna sound like a car snob if I say this car ain't doing it for me? Like, yeah, I love cool black cars, but I'm like, that don't look like it. I'm like,
well, they've added so much to the Mustang, they've ruined that generation Mustang lines.
Yeah, it's too blocky.
Yeah.
It doesn't look right. And I'm fine with updating things. I'm all for that. Like if you're going to do a new iteration, you should do like some updates and reflect something that's considered cool in a modern sense of something you should be able to get on the market at the time. Part of
Right.
it is trying to sell the product. But I just feel like the car is cool in itself, but it doesn't like it looks like an afterthought. Like the red were kind of like Kit's eyes are, if you want to call them that. Like they look like just such an afterthought.
Yeah, if I'm remembering the Knight Rider one correctly, he drove a it was a basically stock version of the Mustang that he drove around in normal times, but the Defender mode equivalent was this.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it actually transformed similar to the Defender, and yet somehow the CGI looked worse. Somehow the end product looked worse. Like, I mean, if you told me, without having seen photos of these cars, that a Dodge Viper with literal Viper fangs on the front would look cooler than a Shelby Cobra Mustang, I wouldn't have believed you. And yet that's what happened. So all that to be said, it's the Viper as a TV show. Well, maybe we should do Knight Rider one of these days. Let us know what you think, audience. But
Give it time.
Viper
Get that. Fun fact. Fun fact. I know everyone's gonna hate on me in the comments. I have actually never seen Knight Rider.
What about
Any
Knight
version
Rider
of it.
2000?
Nope,
Which was a
nothing.
dystopian Knight Rider that had a whole team.
That's
You'll
how,
see
yeah,
a
they had
trend
like
throughout
5
this.
Knight Riders, right? I
Mhm,
remember
yeah.
that too. Oh God. Why?
I might be good for like, development history and lost media and stuff. But when it comes to TV shows, there are so many I haven't seen. So a
Oh,
lot of this you're gonna be getting my first impressions on for this stuff. Like it's wild. One thing I did find though in my research, well, this was one thing. This is one of the highlights I found. Because Tommy, do you want to take us away on this?
When it comes to TV shows and movies and whatnot, you can do tax write-offs. That's how the whole Batgirl movie ended up just disappearing in the ether. Warner Brothers decided that it was so horrible that they would rather scrap the entire thing and claim a tax write-off for it rather than release it to everybody. And so, in a lot of cases, in order to save tax on TV shows that have canceled and whatnot, the production company or the studio will basically destroy all of the props, all of the materials used for that show, and then claim it as a tax write-off. And so, unfortunately, with the case of Viper, they had a number of those gray Viper Defender cars made, and they destroyed most of them, except for the fact that this one rogue Canadian lawyer um, got his hands on a couple of these, sold them sort of in the back end, and then basically got an 18-month conditional sentence for it. But thankfully, he did this because that means that some of these Defender cars still exist out there. Like they were all supposed to be destroyed, but they've made their way into the hands of some collectors. And you can still see them to this day, especially in the States. There are a couple of them that show up at various auto shows and whatnot. So this is a case of a self-serving criminal who ended up doing the fandom a favor, and I'm very grateful to him because
he was the hero we didn't know we needed in the long run. Now here's the question: were they all Defenders though, or because I would assume a lot of them were? I was thinking that was going to be most of like the villain getaway cars and such. Like a lot of the more like side ones you'd see destroyed more often. Was it a lot of them like models based off of our main car?
I was saying, I think it was the hero cars. I think it was Defenders and then the Vipers. It looked more street, but I think they were not street legal in Canada. The ones that he sold.
I don't think so. No, they weren't. But I don't think there are any of them left in Canada anymore. I think they've all made their way down to the States. Like there have been one or two that have popped up on eBay in the last little while. But I'm grateful. I'm happy for the fact that they still exist and that they're still out there. It would have been just, yeah, I don't like that.
He's Viper's equivalent of Robin Hood. He might have done like 7 degrees of, fraud, but thankfully he was a lawyer. So hopefully he got out okay. And what he did might have been really bad and Paramount might have been really mad. But hey, you know what? In the long run, at least all the Viper fans are happy.
It's an oddly great coda for our little story here because, we're about lost media and it came back, somehow this lawyer got his hands on him and a whole new generation of car show viewers can go out and see him in person.
I'm so glad you brought up lost media because it's often found in the strangest of way. And to kind of bringing things over towards the end of this, I really wanted to take time to spring this on you guys because there's something very obscure I learned about this show that very little know about, and it goes back to lost media. So in a magazine, which unfortunately I could not identify which magazine it was prior to this, I'm sorry. If I find out what it is, I'll try to leave a comment in the video in a future date. But there's a magazine scan where they were in development of a CD-ROM game based off of this show. It was supposed to release in December of 1994. Now, the magazine didn't say what the name of the game was, but the game was going to be called VIPER Assault, and there is so little information on this. I gotta give a major shout out to the VIPER Facebook group, because this is where I've actually been able to find a lot of the information on this game because it's so limited. It was going to be developed by a studio called Cyberflix out of Tennessee. They no longer exist. It was going to be for Paramount Interactive. There was only one screenshot that is known to exist. You can kind of see that's one of those old 90s games where you're like behind the wheel and you have like a little art piece in like the bottom corner of Wilkes, like he's going to be talking to you. And I believe Frankie Xavier Williams would be there and he'd be talking to you as well. So you get all the iconic characters. The only things we have currently from what we have uncovered is we have art pieces for both Frankie and Wilkes, and then the one screenshot. That's all we have. And even just if you try Googling it, you're going to be in for a little bit of it's going to be a tough search, but hopefully in the future, we can find out hopefully some more information on this game, because apparently it wasn't even like it was canceled like early on. It was like 70% done. And the co-creator of the show, Danny Bilson, apparently he didn't like the game. So that's why it wasn't finished, I guess.
Danny Bilson, by the way, Danny Bilson, by the way, is Rachel Bilson's father. The same Rachel Bilson who was in the who's a former Mrs. Darth Vader. She was together with Hayden Christensen.
Wait, what? So they're no longer together. Does that mean he was going down a path she couldn't follow?
Pretty much. And they split custody with their daughter. So.
Oh.
Well, guys, listen. I can't. Man, if they ever released that game, I'd be all over that. But all that to be said, that is the TV show Viper. I would personally recommend people watch it. I think it's a really fun romp. If you love cars, if you love action, adventure, romance, suspense, and drama, this show is right for you.
And looking cool.
Personally, they don't really make the Viper car anymore. They stopped production of it a couple of years back, but it still lives on in our hearts. Guys, thank you very much for taking the time to talk about this. We are hopefully going to be back in the short little while with another topic, and it's not just going to be about TV shows. It'll be basically about, whatever strikes our fancy in terms of what things that have maybe disappeared that shouldn't have disappeared, that maybe should come back.
Anything that's gone but not
Nolan,
forgotten. Anything you can find on like the back of the closet, and you'll be like, oh, I forgot this even existed, and like might be able to rekindle a bit. Or maybe it was something like you might have seen in a magazine that never even hit the market. It's like there's a lot of things from the past you might not realize that have its own little story that's worth uncovering.
Maybe a Big Red commercial sing-along.
Yeah, maybe that.
But I think that's our cue to wrap things up. Martin, Nolan, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Audience, let us know your thoughts. Did you enjoy this? Did you watch the TV show? Do you have any other suggestions for us? Do you have a suggestion for a name to call us? Do you want to see more? Leave us your comments. We'd love to read them. Welcome to that.
We need to fill that blank one way or another.
We do. So we hope you will enjoy the members' content that we're going to be producing for you. And we will see you on the next go around. You know what? I think we also need an ending line, a catchphrase too. So we're going to have to work on that as well. But all that to be said, have a wonderful day, night, morning, wherever you may be. And we will see you soon at the place where the all the news that should be fun resides. Talk to you later.
Bye. Night, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Lost Guys here on That Pod Place. Be sure to subscribe for more content like it, and you can become a member at That Pod Place here on YouTube to see more of the Lost Guys every Friday as soon as the guys record an episode. Let us know your thoughts on this intriguing topic in the comments down below. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.